Right, so I'll let it be known at this point, mid-October of 2020. I don't really have too much things going my way in my life. There's not too much stuff right now that's getting me super excited, but the Bills playing, especially this season, how they've played so far is easily the highlight of my week. And I had to wait until freaking Tuesday night to watch them play this week. They're 4-0, coming against the Tennessee Titans, who are pretty much hated across the league because of their infractions to the COVID policy, for good reason. I mean, when only one of 32 teams has a bunch of positive cases, there's a good chance that they were the ones not following the rules, and it wasn't just, oh, it's a whoopsie in the protocol of the NFL because 4 or 5 teams had fuck ups. They're the only ones. So, fuck you, Titans. More importantly, though, and I've seen a lot of rage on social media, and that's why I kind of wanted to get my thoughts out here the next day after the Bills got throttled by the Titans 42-16. And a lot of people, there are like 3 opinions right now, which makes sense. You can kind of assume this pretty much anytime any team loses, really. But the first opinion, the most popular opinion that I've seen generally, is the Bills are overrated. Josh Allen is a fluke, and they've played nobody. The second opinion, and this is one that I'm a firm believer of, and I'm part of this crowd, is that the Bills just got outplayed, outcoached, and just got punched in the mouth and beat. But they're not going to, this isn't going to be a lingering effect. This isn't going to be something that's going to, okay, a month from now the Bills are going to be 4-4. I don't think so. And then the other belief, finally, and this is mainly among Bills fans and among other NFL fans, is that the Titans are really good, and the Bills are like, the season's over, right? Bills fans are thinking, we gotta cut this guy, we gotta trade for this guy, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. When in reality, every team, every year, every good team, every year has a game like this. It happens, right? Take like the 2 or 3 best teams from last season, right? The Chiefs. Granted, they didn't get drubbed the way the Bills did, I guess. But, I mean, they lost to the Titans last year. A team that seemed that they were better than, and ultimately they were better than. And, Mahomes didn't look good in that game, just like Josh Allen didn't look good in this game last night. People weren't jumping ship. They ended up going 12-4. You had, let's see, I distinctly remember the Seahawks, or was it? No, it was the Saints last year who went like 12-4. They got destroyed by the Rams in that game where Cam Jordan had that touchdown get called back. They lost by like 20 or 20-something points. They ended up going 12-4. They were able to kind of wipe it away. It happens a lot, right? Patriots last year, they got destroyed by the Texans. Granted, they didn't have a great finish to the year, but they still went 12-4. One game does not make a season, especially so early. If this was week 13 or 14, yeah, this would be pretty alarming. But this is week 5. You still got a lot of time to work out the kinks. I mean, the Bills are 4-1 after 5 games. If you would have told me that, I would have been very happy, because I did expect them to be about 4-1. But the whole thing about all these people coming out here and saying the Bills are overrated, Josh Allen sucks, this, that, and the third. I just want to say this, all right? Josh Allen, statistically, he wasn't great. And in totality, I thought Josh Allen played well. I really do. Yes, he did throw 2 interceptions. First one, clearly not his fault. hit Andre Roberts right in the hands. And I'm not going to say too much about injuries because the Titans had a number of players out with injuries. The Raiders last week had a number of players out with injuries, so I'm not playing that card because it's a double-edged sword, especially in this season with all the players going down for COVID, sitting out, and just, your typical NFL football injuries. His second interception, though, I don't know what the fuck. That was just bad. Like, that was one of the worst. It wasn't even a bad throw. It was just a horrible read and just an absolute lack of judgment and lapse in judgment from his part. I don't get it at all. That one was like, what the hell? I thought there was miscommunication. Then I watched the replay, and it was just like, no. He threw it right to him. Like, he had a guy open. Like, I guess he was trying to float it in between two defenders. It was like a cover two, right? And you had Butler in the flat, and then I think you had Byer coming over the top, and you had Gabe Davis kind of getting behind Butler, going towards Byer, and he tried to throw it. If he put a little more air under it, he probably would have had something, but he, I don't even know if Butler had to jump up for it. He just kind of had to extend his arms. Like, it was a lob. It was so strange, and it's not like it was deflected or Allen was hit. Like, it was one of the weirdest plays I think I've ever seen Josh Allen make. But no, Josh I didn't think he was bad yesterday. He showed me that he was capable of taking the checkdowns, capable of, dinking and dunking when he needed to. The Bills were really good on third down. They were like 11 of 15 or something. And I mean, dude, if you can get, that's good work if you can get it. I don't care what anybody says. And I mean, he had a number of drops. The big thing, though, is that, and I'll credit this to the Titans, is that the Bills didn't have any explosive plays. They had one run at the very end of the game when they were down by, 34 points or 26 points with a minute left. It was like a 35-yard run. Otherwise, I feel like their longest play, I feel like they didn't have one more than 20 or 25 yards of the whole game, whether that was a run or a pass. And, in the previous few games, the Bills have had a number of big plays, 30, 40, 50 yards, and Titans just didn't let that happen. And, John Brown was not playing. Do I think that had an impact? Of course it did, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse because you lost by 26 points. A good number 2 receiver is not going to give you 26 or 27 more points to let you win this game. Because for me personally, I just look at all four facets of the game: offense, defense, special teams, and discipline. The Bills got blown off the field in literally every single facet of the game, right? Discipline, so many penalties. And they weren't crushing penalties like a 40-yard pass interference that gives them the ball at the 1 yard line or something like that. But it was a lot of little petty shit. Josh Norman got thrown around, like a rag doll by Derrick Henry, and also A.J. Brown turned him into his bitch. He got a number of penalties, whether it was holding or pass interference. Bills kept fucking jumping off sides, both on defense and offense, and it was not ruining the game, but just making things easier and slightly harder, right? Because for example, I know there was a 3rd and 7, and they jumped off sides, make it a 3rd and 2. Titans pick it up. In the Bills, what did they have? First and 10, and then they jump a false start and get it to 1st and 15, or, I don't know if they had one. I think there was one where it was 2nd and 7, false start, 2nd and 12. And that happened 3 or 4 times. And that's just little subtle shit that if you have these big explosive plays can kind of offset that stuff, but they didn't have it. And so, the Titans, they have their typical average run-of-the-mill game penalty-wise. I think they had a few false starts. Otherwise, and a couple block in the backs on punts that didn't really amount to anything of significance. I mean, they were incredibly disciplined, and you look on the offensive side of the ball, the Bills couldn't really run the ball. They were good on 3rd down, but they had no explosion, no big plays. They found themselves having to work their ass off to move the ball down the field with long, meticulous drives. Meanwhile, the Titans, the biggest thing, right? And, when I touch on the defense, we'll get here. But the biggest thing, the reason the Titans won was 3 words: 6 for 6. And that was 6 for 6 in the red zone. And, the Titans didn't have much explosion either, to be honest, on offense at least. Defense, special teams, yeah, when I talk about that. But they were incredibly efficient. As soon as Tannehill got them inside the 20, or with a short field, I feel like they scored every single time they had the ball in the Bills' territory. I feel like maybe there was one where they punted it from like the 40 or 45, but they were able to just dink and dunk their way through with 5, 10, 15, 20-yard touchdowns, and the Bills couldn't stop them. And I respect the hell out of them because they only had but maybe 300 yards of offense, maybe. That might even be generous. I know Tannehill didn't even have more than 200 yards passing, but he had 4 touchdowns. And so, the Titans' offense was great for what it was. I mean, they were able to take advantage of the short fields that they got for whether it was defense or special teams, and they were able to run the clock out at the end of the game. And I mean, the Titans played an insane game. They played a really good game. If anybody wants to try and say that the Bills beat themselves and the Titans didn't beat the Bills, that is such fucking bullshit. Because the Titans, I just don't necessarily know how you can play better than the Titans did, other than beating somebody like 59-0 or something. Like, seriously, they were incredible. And so the Bills' defense was a huge problem. As I said, 6 for 6. That speaks volumes about the Bills' defense. Because, the Bills weren't giving up. They didn't have 100 or 200-yard rusher or 400-yard passer. But, I mean, what's the difference, The Bills' offense, they've turned the ball over twice, or 3 times technically. And all times they got the ball like inside the Bills' 30, and the defense just kept bending and bending and bending, and it broke every time. Like, literally every time. It was atrocious. The fact that you cannot stop an offense that outside of A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, and Ryan Tannehill had like Jonnu Smith and like Ferkser and like Khalif Raymond as their alternative options. The fact that you could not stop that is sad. Like, really, it was way too easy for the Titans. The Bills, they had no pass rush at all, and I think that was their biggest issue. And then, their corners without Tre'Davious White and Levi Wallace, again, don't like to use as an excuse, but I think it's worth mentioning. They just got manhandled. Josh Norman was terrible. If he wasn't getting beat, he was holding, or he was getting fucking treated like a bitch by Derrick Henry. I mean, that's just facts. Because, I mean, yeah, you can look and see, like, oh, Derrick Henry only rushed for 50 yards. Yeah, he had, like, under 3 yards a carry. Okay, that's cool, but Tannehill had 4 touchdowns, didn't have any turnovers. The Bills couldn't get any stops. I think they forced, like, 3 or 4 punts, but the Titans it was way too easy, dude. It was way too easy, Whether it was Josh Allen's interceptions getting returned to the 25-yard line, or, fumbles on special teams, or kick returns or punt returns. The reason why the Bills didn't give up a 200-yard rusher or 400-yard passer is because how the fuck are you going to get that many yards when you keep getting the ball, at the 20 and 30? I mean, you can only gain 30 yards in a drive. And, I mean, they gained the maximum amount of yards they could gain almost every single time in their drive. And, I mean, yeah, they only had maybe 300 yards of offense, but they didn't need to. I mean, they dropped 42. They scored 6 touchdowns in a fucking game. Like, that's really good. That is probably as much. They're probably going to score as many points today as they are the whole season, like in one game. And so, if people are going to try and look at the stat sheet and be like, what the fuck happened? I mean, that's what happened. The Titans took advantage of every little, like, the Bills gave them 1 or 2 inches and they took a yard, like, every single fucking time, right? Defensively, though, the Titans, I don't necessarily want to say they did anything too crazy, but they did the small things well. Didn't give up any big plays, forced the Bills to methodically move down the field, which I thought the Bills did with relative success, but it backfired with the turnovers, and also, penalties really made it difficult. The Titans didn't have too crazy of a pass rush, but they clamped down. Butler, right place, right time. They did really well when it comes to setting up blocks for him on what was nearly a pick six, like a 70-yard pick six. It would have been nuts. He's kind of right place, right time for that first interception, but the Bills defense, they didn't get any pass rush. DBs got manhandled. Yeah, they stopped Derrick Henry pretty well, I thought. He had like 50 yards, but it doesn't really matter, because you can look at yards. It doesn't matter if they're just going to score touchdowns. It's like you ask yourself, like, would you rather give up 500 total yards and like 20 points, or would you rather give up 250 yards and 40 points? That's pretty much what happened. And then special teams, the Bills missed on the 2-point conversion. I guess if you want to say that's special teams, kind of is, I guess. Jorquez was pretty good punting, but ultimately the Bills fumbled a kick return, and the Titans, on the other hand, their special teams was fantastic. Their punter was constantly pinning the Bills back deep. Like, it was a game of field position. The Bills were constantly getting it inside the 20. The Titans were constantly getting it either in the Bills' territory or like near midfield, and it just made things incredibly easy for an offense to just, get 20 yards and you're boom in scoring position. And it was crazy. It was like once they got in scoring position, they had field goal was not on their mind. Like, they were getting a touchdown, and they got a touchdown. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But you look at those 4 phases of the game, when you get dominated and you get handily beaten in every single phase, how can you expect to not keep this game close? Like, what? Like, how can you expect to keep this game close? Like, if I just said that you got your ass kicked offensively, you got your ass kicked defensively, you got your shit rocked on special teams, and you were also outcoached and you're much, much less disciplined, your team. Would you be surprised if you lost by 26 points? I don't think so. But ultimately, do I want to say this game is a fluke? Yeah, I do. I think so. The Bills are going to get back. Hopefully they get back Tre'Davious White and John Brown, because literally both of their subs were the reason why the Bills had some big problems, because I think John Brown coming back helps the Bills open up their defense and become more of a vertical attack and actually being able to stretch the ball down the field and not having to rely on like passes under 10 yards. And then Tre'Davious White takes the pressure off of a guy like Josh Norman, who was terrible, and also maybe Levi Wallace coming back. Those are 2 big things, because AJ Brown was bodying Josh Norman all game long. Once again, didn't have 300 yards receiving. I think he only had like 70 or 80, but he had 2 touchdowns, I think. I know he had at least 1, but I'm just saying. Those were big, but I don't know. I think the Bills will regroup. I think this was an unfortunate bump in the road, but I think we'll listen to this back month, 2 months, 3 months, a year from now maybe, and be like, damn, I was right. I didn't overreact. I didn't buy into the hype on both sides, Bills Mafia and the NFL. Josh Allen's not really bad. The Bills season's not over. It's only just begun. You're 4-1, and you're going to play the defending Super Bowl champs on national television. I'm excited.